My daughter-in-law suggested we take a trip together to get closer. It was the day I discovered she planned to commit me to a facility and steal everything I had built in life.
Mein Name ist Autumn Miller.
I am 58 years old, and I sit here in my living room in my comfortable two-bedroom apartment in Chicago, Illinois, telling a story that sends shivers down my spine every time I think about it. A story about how I almost lost everything because I blindly trusted the wrong people, and how I discovered a much stronger woman existed within me than I ever imagined. I had always been a fighter, not one to let life's challenges get the best of me. After losing my husband, Chase, 13 years ago in a car accident, I raised my son, Tristan, alone. I worked for over 20 years as a secretary at a prominent law firm. It was a true blessing when my Aunt Piper, who had no children, left me an inheritance that allowed me to buy this apartment in Chicago where I live today. I combined that inheritance with my years of savings and was able to provide a good life for my son, always keeping a little something saved for a rainy day. When Tristan married Leah years ago, my heart was filled with joy. My son deserved to find true love, and she seemed like an educated young woman from a good family, full of plans for the future. Shortly after, my granddaughter, Skylar, was born, who is now 8 years old and the most precious thing in my life. Since her birth, I have been the overjoyed grandmother everyone knows. In recent years, especially after I retired, I cared for Skylar almost every day. Tristan and Leah worked long hours, coming home late, and I simply loved having my granddaughter's company. It was my greatest joy to wake up knowing she would spend the day with me, that we would cook together, watch cartoons, and do homework at the kitchen table. But for several months, I noticed something changing in the way Leah treated me. She started making strange comments about my daily routine, my memory, and my ability to care for myself. She said I was forgetting too many things, that it might be better if I didn't stay alone so much, that a woman my age needed more medical attention. At first, I thought it was the normal concern of a loving daughter-in-law. After all, she had married young, was only in her 20s when she joined our family, and had always shown me respect. But the comments became more frequent, more specific, and more uncomfortable. Leah began to say that I repeated the same stories over and over in conversation, that I sometimes forgot to turn off the stove, that I confused people's names on the street. I was surprised and even a little frightened, because honestly, I couldn't remember having done these things. I started to wonder if something was really happening to me. Tristan, my son, always agreed with everything his wife said about me. If I tried to defend myself or explain that I was perfectly fine, he would give me a pitying look and say, "You have to accept that you're getting older, that there's nothing to be ashamed of in needing help." That hurt me deeply. But I swallowed my pride to avoid causing problems in the family. The situation worsened when Leah suggested drastic changes to my daily life. She said I shouldn't care for Skylar alone anymore. That it was too much responsibility for someone in my supposed condition. She suggested hiring a companion to stay with me during the day, to help with housework and keep me company. I protested vigorously, saying I was perfectly capable of caring for myself. One Tuesday morning in March, something happened that completely unnerved me. Leah appeared at my apartment, accompanied by a doctor, a certain Dr. Caldwell, whom she introduced as a geriatric specialist. She said she had arranged a routine appointment for me, just to be absolutely sure that my mental and physical health were in order. The examination was strange from the very first moment. The doctor asked very specific questions about my memory, my ability to make important decisions, my social life, my financial independence. She asked if I truly felt safe living alone, if I had difficulty managing my personal finances, if I sometimes felt confused or completely lost. Leah sat beside me the entire time, supplementing my answers with information that left me stunned. She spoke of episodes I couldn't recall, situations where I had supposedly shown confusion or forgetfulness. It was as if she had a mental file of all my alleged failings. I left that examination with a terrible feeling in my chest, as if something very bad was being planned against me, without me being able to understand exactly what. The doctor had said it was very important that I consider more daily support, that people my age needed special care to maintain their quality of life. Leah left from there very helpful and concerned, saying she would research the best options for caregivers for me. She wanted to find someone truly special to accompany me. She spoke as if it were already a decided matter that I would need constant supervision. That night, I stayed awake for a long time, tossing and turning in bed, replaying every word of the examination, every expression of the doctor, every comment from Leah. Something inside me screamed that this examination was not normal, that something sinister was hidden behind all this sudden concern for my mental health. In the following weeks, Leah dramatically escalated her comments about my alleged frailty. She told Tristan that I was deteriorating rapidly, that they urgently needed to make a decision about my care before it was too late. She began openly talking about specialized assisted living facilities, about how much better it would be for me to have constant company from trained staff. I felt as if I were truly losing my mind. Was I really losing my faculties and not realizing it? Was my family right? And was I stubborn if I insisted I was fine? I began compulsively watching my every move, every word I said, desperately searching for signs of mental confusion. Then Leah made the suggestion that would change my life forever. A weekend trip, just the two of us, to calmly discuss my future and get closer than we ever had before. She said she wanted to deeply understand my needs, learn my innermost fears, and that away from the hustle and bustle of Chicago, we could build a truly special relationship. I confess that I was genuinely moved by the proposal. I had always dreamed of having a close and loving relationship with my son's wife. And this trip seemed like the perfect opportunity to make that dream come true. Leah spoke of a beautiful, luxurious resort in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a quiet and inviting place where we could completely relax, talk in peace, and plan the next steps of my life together. I immediately accepted the proposal with a heart full of hope and gratitude. Finally, I would have the chance to truly get closer to my daughter-in-law, clear up misunderstandings, and show that I was still a clear-minded and capable woman. I packed a small suitcase with comfortable clothes for 2 days. I carefully set aside my blood pressure medication. My important documents and my debit card went into my purse. On the morning of our departure, Leah arrived promptly at my apartment, driving her car, radiant and affectionate in a way she hadn't been towards me in a long time. She said we would stop for lunch along the way. It would be a pleasant and completely relaxing journey. I got into the car confidently and excitedly, imagining the profound conversations we would have. What I couldn't have imagined, not even in my darkest nightmares, was that I was getting into a car that could change my life forever, that this trip was not meant to bring us closer, but to permanently remove me from everything I had built through a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice. During the first few miles of the drive, Leah was strangely animated, talking about how wonderful it would be if I had a quieter life, how important it was to accept help when needed, how certain changes could be extremely positive for my well-being and peace of mind. I listened somewhat distractedly, gazing at the beautiful scenery out the window, thinking about how our conversation at the resort would go, imagining that I would finally have the opportunity to show her that I was still a strong and independent woman. But something in her tone, in the excessive persistence with which she spoke about changes and acceptance, began to stir a deep unease in my chest. It was as if she was mentally preparing me for something I couldn't yet understand, but that my instincts were beginning to dread. As the car drove along the interstate, I thought back to the first few years after my retirement. I had so many plans: an English class, dance lessons, maybe some trips to places I'd always wanted to see. But Tristan and Leah suggested I care for Skylar, as they worked so much. I accepted it wholeheartedly, because my granddaughter was everything to me. The first few months were wonderful. Skylar would come to my apartment early. I took her to school, picked her up in the late afternoon. We helped each other with homework. We were inseparable companions, and I felt useful, needed. But little by little, Tristan and Leah began to depend too much on my availability. Entire weekends where Skylar stayed with me because they had commitments, holidays where they traveled and left me alone with the girl, school meetings that only I attended because they always had something more urgent. What truly bothered me was when I realized that my entire life revolved around serving the family. If I mentioned that I'd like to take a class or join a senior group, Leah always found a justification for why Skylar needed me more. There was one episode that deeply affected me. It was the 60th birthday of Chloe, my oldest friend. I had been looking forward to it for so long, bought new clothes, excited to see loved ones again. On the morning of the party, Leah called me in a panic, saying that an urgent work meeting had come up that could determine a major promotion. She said I was the only person in the world she trusted Skylar with, that it was an emergency that could jeopardize her entire career. I cancelled my plans, put the new clothes back in the closet, and spent the day playing with Skylar, my heart bleeding with disappointment. From that day on, I began to recognize a cruel pattern. Whenever I expressed a desire to have my own social life, family emergencies would miraculously pop up, requiring my presence. It was as if they were afraid I might develop interests outside the family circle. Leah began making insidious comments about my friends, suggesting that people my age sometimes had negative influences on each other. She said I should be careful with friendships that encouraged me to be selfish, that family was the most important thing, that I already had everything I needed with them. Tristan agreed with everything his wife said, and I began to feel isolated within my own family. My opinions were dismissed as the ideas of someone who didn't understand the modern world. My wishes were treated as the whims of an older woman. My autonomy was gradually undermined. In this context, Leah began to plant the first seeds about my alleged need for medical care. She said that people my age should have regular geriatric checkups, that it was crucial to prevent cognitive decline before it became irreversible. It sounded so reasonable that I agreed without hesitation. After all, it's important to take care of one's health, and a daughter-in-law who cared about my well-being seemed like a blessing. How deceived I was about the true intentions behind all that helpfulness. After the strange consultation with Dr. Caldwell, Leah completely changed her approach to me. She started treating me like a porcelain doll on the verge of breaking. She constantly commented on what the doctor had recommended, how I needed to accept certain age-related limitations. She said there was nothing shameful in acknowledging when we need help, that a true family is one that makes courageous decisions for the good of all. She spoke about specialized caregivers as if they were guardian angels sent from heaven. I began to question my own perception of reality. Was I really forgetting important things? Was my family noticing signs of decline that I refused to see? Uncertainty gripped me, and I began to distrust my own abilities. In this dark time, Leah intensified her campaign. She openly spoke about assisted living, about how wonderful it would be to have constant company from specialized staff. She described these places as true havens where I would be treated like a queen. Tristan always agreed, saying we had to think about what was best for everyone, especially Skylar, who shouldn't bear the burden of worrying about her grandmother. It was as if I had become a troublesome burden that needed to be gently removed. One afternoon, Leah brought some colorful brochures for assisted living facilities. The photos showed beautiful places with manicured gardens, smiling people, recreational activities. She spoke with so much enthusiasm about how I would make new friends, how I would have constant medical care, how I would be free from all household worries. But something deep in my heart screamed that this wasn't right. I felt good, capable, independent. Why should I leave my home, my apartment acquired with so much effort, to live in a place with strangers? When I expressed these doubts, Leah sighed pityingly and said that precisely this kind of resistance showed how I was losing the ability to make rational decisions, that people with cognitive problems always think they are fine, that it is part of the illness not to be aware of one's own limitations. In this moment of extreme vulnerability, something happened that shook me even more. Leah brought Skylar to my apartment less and less often. She said the girl was stressed by my confusions, that an 8-year-old child shouldn't witness an elderly person's episodes of forgetfulness. When I protested that there were no episodes, that I was perfectly fine, Leah shook her head pityingly and said that this only confirmed my condition, that people with cognitive problems never admit they have problems, that this lack of perception is part of the illness. Skylar's absence from my daily routine was devastating. My house became too quiet.
The days dragged on meaninglessly.
I felt useless and dispensable. It was as if the sunshine had been taken out of my life, leaving me in a cold, lonely darkness. Tristan came only for brief visits, always accompanied by his wife, always with that worried look of someone dealing with a problem person. They were no longer visits from a loving son. They were inspections to check my mental and physical state. During these visits, they watched my every move like detectives searching for evidence of a crime. If I forgot where I had put my glasses, they exchanged knowing glances. If I repeated a comment, they mentally noted it as proof of my deterioration. The isolation gradually consumed me. My friends called less often, because Leah always found excuses for me not to answer the phone or go out. She said I was in a delicate phase, needed to avoid excessive stimuli, that it was better to keep daily life calm and controlled. I began to live in a gilded cage in my own home. I had everything I needed materially, but gradually, everything that gave meaning to my life was taken from me. My granddaughter, my independence, my relationships, my dignity. It was as if they were psychologically preparing me to accept any solution they presented, making me so fragile and insecure that I would embrace any suggestion as salvation. And that's exactly what happened when Leah came up with her seemingly salvific idea. We had been driving for almost an hour when Leah began to talk about our destination in a way that disturbed me. It no longer seemed like a relaxing resort, but a kind of facility where people like me received special care. When I directly asked if we were really going to the resort she had mentioned, she hesitated in her voice, which made my blood run cold. Leah said it was an even better place, where I would be very well cared for, with specialized professionals who perfectly understood the needs of people in my age group. Her tone had completely changed. It was no longer the loving daughter-in-law talking about a bonding trip, but someone taking me somewhere against my will. My heart began to beat irregularly. I asked how long we would stay at this place, if it was really just a weekend, as originally agreed. Her answer made my blood run cold. She said it depended on how I adapted to the new environment, that it might be interesting to stay for a longer period to see how I would feel. At that moment, a terrifying suspicion began to form in my mind. This was no casual mother-in-law and daughter-in-law outing. It was something much more serious and final. I asked if Tristan knew exactly where we were going, if he had agreed to all the details of this change of plan. Leah replied, yes, Tristan was fully informed and agreed, and he even believed it was for the best for the whole family, especially Skylar. The mention of my granddaughter filled me with despair. I asked what Skylar had to do with our situation. Why would an 8-year-old child be affected by where I spent the weekend? Leah's answer was like a direct stab to my heart. She said young children shouldn't bear the emotional responsibility of living with grandmothers in a state of mental confusion, that Skylar would be traumatized if she witnessed my episodes of forgetfulness, that it would be much better for her to have a normal childhood without these heavy worries. In that moment, I felt as if the blindfold had fallen from my eyes. I began to understand that this trip was not about my well-being or our family bonding, but about permanently removing me from their lives, taking me somewhere where I would no longer be a problem or a concern. I tried to remain calm and asked to see my purse, which was on the back seat of the car. I wanted to check if I had brought all my important documents, my cards, my medications. Leah said I shouldn't worry about it. She had taken care of all the practical details. I wouldn't need documents at the place we were going. This answer sent me into complete panic. Why wouldn't I need my own documents? Why was she evading when it came to letting me rummage in my own bag? I insisted energetically, saying I had a terrible headache and needed to check if I had brought my special medication. Leah reluctantly handed me the bag, but I immediately noticed that she was watching me like a guard watching a prisoner. When I opened my wallet, I discovered something that completely shocked me. Several important items were simply gone. My checkbook, which I always carried for emergencies, wasn't there. My main credit card, which gave me financial independence, had mysteriously disappeared. Even my health insurance card was missing. I asked where these things were, and Leah said with feigned concern that I had probably forgotten them at home, and that this only confirmed how much supervision I truly needed. Then my cell phone rang for the first time. It was Tristan calling, and his name on the display filled me with desperate hope. Leah immediately made an energetic gesture for me not to answer, saying he was probably just calling to see if we were doing well on the trip. She would talk to him later. But something in her tone warned me that Tristan wasn't making a routine call. These were persistent, desperate calls, like someone trying to reach me for something very important. Even without answering, I could hear part of a message he was leaving on voicemail. My son's voice was changed, nervous, as if he were in a complete panic. I could catch snippets of words that horrified me. He spoke of having discovered something, that I shouldn't go anywhere without talking to him first, of documents he had found. I urgently asked Leah to stop the car so I could call my son back. A mother always knows when something is wrong with her child, and Tristan was clearly desperate, trying to tell me something urgent. But she categorically refused, saying, "It's not necessary. We can clear up any misunderstanding when we arrive at our destination." The cell phone kept ringing incessantly, and Leah became visibly nervous and irritated. She said, "Tristan sometimes gets too anxious about small things. He knows all about our plans. I shouldn't worry about phones when I'm supposed to be relaxing during our trip." But I could no longer pretend to be relaxed. Every ring of the phone strengthened my certainty that something was terribly wrong. Leah finally stopped at a gas station, but not so I could call Tristan, but because she needed to refuel and use the restroom. As soon as she turned off the engine, Tristan called again, and this time I was able to answer before she could stop me. My son's voice exploded desperately on the phone. He shouted, "You need to get out of that car immediately. Leah is taking you to a terrible place. You are in real danger and need to escape." Tristan, crying on the phone, told me he had found a whole folder hidden in Leah's drawer with documents about my alleged commitment to a mental health facility, that she had created forged medical reports claiming I had advanced dementia, was unable to care for myself, and posed a danger to my surroundings. My son quickly explained that he had only discovered everything that morning when he was looking for an important document and reached into his wife's personal drawer. He not only found the forged commitment papers but also power of attorney documents that she had falsified to manage all my assets in my name. Leah noticed what was happening and violently tried to snatch the phone from my hand. She screamed, "Tristan is having a paranoia attack. You're getting things confused. You have to trust me because I know better than anyone what's good for you." Tristan continued to shout into the phone, "Ask for help from anyone nearby. Do not get back in that car." He said he was driving frantically to find me, that he had called the police. Leah had committed serious crimes by forging medical documents in my name. In that devastating moment, as I saw my daughter-in-law's disturbed face, I finally understood the monstrous extent of what was happening to me. All the comments about my alleged mental confusion, the strange medical examination, the insistence that I needed special care. Everything had been part of a diabolical plan to commit me against my will and steal my assets. Leah continued to try to convince me that Tristan was lying, that he didn't understand what was best for me, that I should trust her and continue our journey because everything was perfectly planned for my well-being. But her eyes were different now, wild, desperate, like someone watching all their carefully laid plans collapse within minutes. I told her, my voice trembling with fear and indignation, that I needed to use the gas station restroom, that I felt very unwell with all this confusion. Leah visibly hesitated, as she couldn't deny a basic physiological need, but said she would accompany me to make sure I was okay. I insisted with all the determination I could muster that I needed privacy, that it was extremely embarrassing and humiliating to be accompanied to the restroom as if I were an incompetent child. Leah reluctantly gave in but warned me to be quick, that we couldn't waste time, as we were already late for our appointment. I entered the gas station restroom, my hands trembling uncontrollably, my heart hammering like a drum, trying to process the horrifying implications of what I had discovered. My own daughter-in-law, the mother of my beloved granddaughter, had meticulously planned to commit me to a mental health facility using completely forged documents to seize my home and all my life savings. I looked through the small window of the restroom and saw Leah nervously standing next to the car, agitatedly talking on the phone, probably to report our delay and Tristan's discovery of the documents. It was my only chance to escape this terrible trap. There was a back door leading to a small employee parking lot. I took a deep breath, gathered all the courage left in me, and in a decision that would change my life forever, I made the bravest choice of my 58 years. I ran through that door without looking back. For the first time in my life, at 58 years old, I was fleeing from my own family. But I was also running towards my freedom, my dignity, and my sacred right to decide my own life. Across the street was a small shopping plaza. I crossed the street without looking and entered a diner where a few people were quietly eating lunch. I asked to use the phone and immediately called Tristan. He answered on the first ring, still desperate. Tristan told me he was driving like crazy to find me, that he would arrive where I was in less than an hour, but that I had to hide until he arrived because Leah would surely have noticed my escape by now and would be looking for me. I quickly explained where I was, and the young woman at the diner, who had noticed my state, offered to seat me in a back corner. Miss Serenity Davies was the name of the owner, a woman in her 60s with grey hair and a kind gaze. When I briefly explained that I was fleeing a dangerous family situation, she didn't hesitate to help me. She said she had a daughter my age and fully understood how some people take advantage of the elderly. While I waited for Tristan to arrive, Miss Davies offered me a hot coffee and let me use her phone to make some important calls. The first went to my next-door neighbor, Chloe, the same friend whose birthday I had missed. I quickly explained the situation and asked her to keep an eye on my apartment. Chloe was horrified when I told her about the forged documents and the commitment plan. She said she had always found Leah a bit strange, very interested in knowing about my finances and assets. She told me that she had seen Leah talking to strangers at the building's concierge desk several times, pointing to the window of my apartment. The second call went to Mr. Austin, the lawyer at the firm where I had worked for so many years. He had always been a person I trusted and who knew my financial situation. When I told him about the forged documents, he was outraged and said it was a serious crime, that I needed to file a police report immediately. Mr. Austin advised me to go to the nearest police station as soon as Tristan arrived. He said that forging medical documents for involuntary commitment was a crime of unlawful imprisonment and fraud, that Leah could face several years in prison. He reassured me, saying I had done the right thing by escaping. Those were the longest 40 minutes of my life, waiting for Tristan to appear. Miss Davies talked with me the whole time, calming me down and telling me about similar situations she had already witnessed. She said it was unfortunately common for people to exploit the elderly, especially when assets were involved. She was the one who made me realize that I was not the first person to go through something like this. She told me about a gentleman who visited the diner, whose children had tried to commit him to get his pension, and about a lady whose own daughter-in-law had convinced her to sign power of attorney documents that were later used to sell her house. When Tristan finally arrived, his face was red and sweaty, clearly in shock. He hugged me tightly and asked for my forgiveness several times. He said he could never have imagined that Leah was capable of such a thing, that he had only discovered everything by chance when he was looking in a drawer she always kept locked. Tristan told me details that horrified me even more. Leah had not only forged medical reports but also my signature on power of attorney documents. She had even forged a neighbor's statement claiming I posed a danger to myself and other residents of the building. My son showed me photocopies of the documents he had found. It was a complete dossier on my alleged mental incapacity with dates, times, fabricated situations where I had shown confusion. Leah had constructed a very detailed false case against me and had been planning everything for at least 6 months. What shocked me most was the discovery that she had already visited the facility where she intended to commit me. There were photos of her speaking with staff, papers with monthly costs, even a schedule for my adjustment to the place. Everything coldly planned, as if I were an object to be disposed of. Tristan said he had tried to confront Leah the night before, but she had simply denied everything. She said he was misunderstanding, that these documents were only precautions in case I truly needed care in the future. However, when he threatened to call the police, she panicked and confessed part of the plan. I discovered that the assets she wanted were not just my pension. Leah knew about my Aunt Piper's inheritance, the true value of the Chicago apartment, the savings I had kept. She had calculated that with my commitment, Tristan would inherit everything, and she would have control of the assets. Still at Ms. Davies' diner, Tristan called a lawyer friend, explained the situation, and the lawyer advised us to go to the nearest police station immediately to file a report. He said, the sooner we acted, the better it would be to protect my rights and punish Leah for the crimes committed. During the drive to the police station, Tristan told me he had found some things suspicious in recent months. Leah always insisted that he not visit me alone. She always found excuses to accompany him when he visited me. She said it was for my protection, but in reality, she was controlling our conversations. My son had also noticed that Leah knew an excessive amount about my finances. She made comments about expenses I had made, about movements in my account. Information she shouldn't have had, but he didn't realize she was investigating my financial life to plan a fraud. At the police station, Detective Cole was impressed by the amount of evidence Tristan had brought. He said that fraud cases against the elderly were becoming more common, but he had rarely seen such a sophisticated and cruel scheme. Leah had committed several crimes and could face a severe penalty. The detective outlined the next steps. Medical examinations would be required to prove my mental competence and to refute the forged reports Leah had created. I would also need to find witnesses who could confirm my mental clarity in recent months. Chloe, my neighbor, came to the police station that same day to give her statement. She spoke about our normal conversations, how I was always completely clear-headed, and how Leah tried to isolate me from my friendships. Her testimony was crucial in proving that I was being manipulated. Mr. Austin also came to testify, speaking about my professional competence over the years and my ability to manage complex matters at the office. He said a person with cognitive problems could never perform the tasks I did until my retirement. Meanwhile, the police drove to the gas station where everything happened to look for Leah, but she had completely disappeared. She had left the car at the gas station and vanished. Probably because she realized her plan had been exposed and she would be arrested if she remained in the area. Tristan was devastated when he realized he had married a criminal, that he had been deceived for years by a woman who had cold-bloodedly planned to steal from me and destroy our family. He said he would never be able to trust anyone the same way again, that he felt guilty for not having noticed the signs. That night, I returned to my apartment in Chicago, accompanied by Tristan and Chloe. I had never felt so grateful to be in my own home, in my own bed, free to make my own decisions. The feeling of freedom was indescribable after having been so close to losing it forever. But I knew this was just the beginning of a new phase in my life. Leah had shown me how vulnerable I was living alone, how malicious people could exploit the trust of an older woman. I would have to rebuild my life in a safer and more protected way. The most important thing was that I had discovered something about myself that I didn't know existed: the courage to fight for my rights, the strength to confront people who tried to harm me, the intelligence to escape a trap that could have completely destroyed my life. At 58, I had learned that it is never too late to defend yourself, never too late to say no, never too late to start anew when people try to bring us down. 3 months have passed since that terrible day on the interstate. 3 months that have completely changed my perspective on family, trust, and my own strength. Today, sitting here in my living room, I can say that I am a completely different woman than the one who got into that car believing in a bonding trip. The first few days after the discovery were the hardest. I couldn't sleep properly. Every sound startled me. I checked the locks several times before falling asleep. The trauma of being betrayed by my own family affected me in a way I hadn't expected. Mr. Austin recommended a psychologist specializing in the elderly, Dr. Richter, who has helped me immensely to process everything that happened. Tristan also went through a terrible time. His marriage completely collapsed when the truth came out. Leah had not only forged documents to commit me but also incurred debts in his name, hoping to use my assets for repayment after my commitment. My son discovered he had been married to a woman he didn't truly know. The most painful part was dealing with Skylar's situation. My granddaughter was confused about her mother's sudden disappearance. She didn't understand why Mommy was suddenly gone and wasn't coming back. Tristan had to gently explain to her that Mommy had made mistakes and had to live far away from the family. Skylar came to stay with me for a few days while Tristan organized his new daily life. During these conversations with my granddaughter, I discovered something that made me angry and relieved at the same time. Leah had actually planted ideas in the child's mind about my alleged mental confusion. She told Skylar that Grandma was getting forgetful and that she shouldn't tell me certain things so as not to make me sad. I discovered that Leah instructed Skylar to observe my behavior and report back. She asked the girl to tell if Grandma had forgotten something, if she had repeated a story, if she had done something strange. She used my own granddaughter as a spy to construct the false case against me. The wickedness of that woman knew no bounds. Fortunately, Skylar is a smart child and began to understand that her mother was lying about me. She said she had never seen me confused or forgetful, that I always remembered everything and told the best stories. My granddaughter's innocent testimony was an enormous relief for me. Leah simply vanished after everything was exposed. Tristan tried to contact her several times, mainly because of Skylar, but she never responded again. She changed her phone, left her job, and no one knew where she had gone. It was as if she had never existed in our lives. Mr. Austin advised us on the legal options, but we decided not to press charges. Tristan wanted to get rid of any connection to Leah as quickly as possible, and I just wanted peace. Sometimes the best justice is simply to move on and rebuild your life. During this time, my relationship with Tristan solidified in a way we hadn't expected. My son felt responsible for bringing this woman into our family and began visiting me every day. We talked about everything. He asked me for advice on raising Skylar alone, on rebuilding life after such a brutal betrayal. Tristan sold the house where he lived with Leah and moved into a smaller apartment closer to mine. He said he wanted to be near me to help me, but also because he needed my presence in his life. We had lost years of togetherness because of Leah's manipulation, and now we wanted to make up for lost time. Skylar adjusted well to the new reality. In fact, she seemed happier without the constant pressure from her mother, who always made her feel guilty when she spent time with me. Now she came naturally to my apartment, without fear of doing anything wrong by loving her grandmother. I started attending therapy twice a week with Dr. Richter. She helped me understand that I was not to blame for anything, that I had become a victim of a manipulative person. She taught me techniques to deal with the anxiety that remained after the trauma. And above all, she helped me regain my self-confidence. One of the most important things I learned in therapy was the difference between kindness and naivety. I had always been a kind person who saw the best in people, and that was not a flaw. The problem was that I hadn't set clear boundaries, hadn't questioned suspicious behavior, and hadn't trusted my instincts when something seemed wrong. Dr. Richter taught me warning signs of manipulation, gradual isolation from friendships, constant questioning of mental capabilities, control disguised as concern, using other family members to validate abusive behavior. Knowledge that everyone my age should have. I started nurturing my old friendships again. Chloe became an even closer companion. We now have coffee together every afternoon, talk about life, and support each other. She always says my experience warned her to be more attentive to her own family. I resumed the plans I had given up because of Leah's manipulation. I signed up for a painting class, something I had always wanted to do. I started participating in a senior group at the local community center. I had my own social life again, independent of anyone else's approval or disapproval. The most rewarding thing was seeing Skylar proud of her brave grandma. She tells her friends at school how clever her grandmother was and how she escaped a dangerous situation. To her, I became a kind of hero, a strong woman who wasn't completely fooled. Tristan also changed his perspective on me. He stopped treating me like a fragile old lady who needed constant protection and began to respect me as the independent woman I always was. He asks for my opinion on important decisions, acknowledges my life experience, and values my wisdom. I discovered that Leah had left several debts. Credit cards in Tristan's name, loans she had taken out without his knowledge, overdue bills that surfaced after she disappeared. My son had to use his savings to pay everything off and clear his name. It was painful to see Tristan fall into financial distress because of this woman, but I offered him my help, and he accepted it. I used part of my savings so he could start anew with dignity. After all, family is what matters, being there for each other in difficult times. In the following months, we discovered more lies Leah had told. She never had the job she talked about. She invented commitments to leave the house. She lied about where she spent her time. Tristan realized he had been married to a complete stranger for years. Dr. Caldwell, the doctor who had examined me so strangely, also disappeared. When Tristan tried to find her to better understand what had happened, he found that her practice was closed, and no one knew where she had gone. She probably knew she would be discovered and also fled. Tristan told me that when he looked through the things Leah had left behind, he found notes about my daily routine, my habits, and my finances. She had studied our family for a long time and planned every step of the scheme that almost worked. There were even drafts of letters she intended to write to me after my commitment, portraying herself as loving and concerned, explaining how much better I would be in the place she had taken me. The calculating coldness of that woman impressed and disgusted me at the same time. What struck me most was the realization that everything started much earlier than I had imagined. Leah had not chosen Tristan out of love, but because she knew he had a widowed mother with assets. The entire marriage was an elaborate charade to get to me and my wealth. During therapy sessions, Dr. Richter helped me process this deep betrayal. It wasn't just about the money or the apartment. It was about years of my life that I had wholeheartedly dedicated to a person who only saw me as a target. Years of affection, care, love wasted in a false relationship. But I also learned that I shouldn't blame myself for being deceived. Leah was a skilled manipulator who knew exactly how to gain trust and exploit emotions. I was a victim, not an accomplice to my own humiliation. Today, at 58, I can say that I am stronger and more aware than ever. The terrible experience with Leah taught me about my own resilience, about my ability to fight for my rights, about the importance of never giving up my dignity. Sometimes I wonder where Leah is now, if she was able to use her schemes on other families, if she will one day pay for what she did. But I have learned that I cannot dwell on that. What matters is that I was able to escape, that I protected my assets and my freedom. Tristan is recovering well, has met a kind woman at work, and they are slowly getting to know each other. Skylar likes her, and so do I. This time, we are all more attentive, more cautious, but without losing the ability to love and trust the right people. My message to everyone who hears me is simple: trust your gut.
Don't be afraid to question suspicious behavior.
Always maintain your independence, and remember that age is not a synonym for incompetence. Despite everything Leah did to me, I can't stop thinking about Skylar. A child shouldn't grow up without her mother, no matter how bad that mother may have been. Deep in my heart, I still hold out hope that Leah will one day change, seek help, and become the person Skylar deserves as a mother. It's not forgiveness for what she did to me. It's compassion for an innocent child who needs a maternal figure. If Leah truly decides to change one day, to seek treatment, to take responsibility for her mistakes, I would support a supervised reunion with Skylar. Because family is complicated, but a child's love for their mother is sacred. Life has taught me that sometimes you have to lose almost everything to discover how strong you truly are. In my years, I've discovered that it's never too late to start over, never too late to defend yourself, and never too late to prioritize your own happiness over any emotional blackmail. If this story has touched your heart, please share your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Your message could brighten someone's day.